G'day, Ben from Duck Plain Chicken here with the next video in the build series of the FineMolds Savoia S21 1/48 scale from the movie Porco Rosso. So if you watched the last video, you know that a lot of what I did was with the cockpit and the engine, getting the motor to work within the engine block. Now I'm starting on the painting of the the exterior of the plane. And there's a couple of things to sort of consider. First of all, there are these white and green stripes that go on the underside of the wings. So rather than use the decals, I will actually just paint those. I think that's going to be easier. And also on the rear stabilizer here, there's sort of the green and white. And so the first step is to basically use this SMS Surfacer White, so I'll be putting that down. But while I'm at it, I want to also get the tan parts primed. So for that, I'm going to use the Surfacer White, but I'm just going to sort of place the underside here, and I'll just mask off these top areas just so I don't get any sort of overspray in there. So I really don't want to mess up the work that I've already sort of done. So that has to be rough masking. So I'll paint the underside, and because it's sort of going to sit in place in the fuselage like so, and just a few dabs of glue, it's great. I won't have to do any masking. So by keeping it within the fuselage, I can sort of, just get that one side painted. Also going to prime the underside of the floats as well, so that they're ready for the tan paint. So without further ado, let's get some white surfacer down. Okay, change of plans. I put the white primer down, thinking that get ready to sort of mask off the white and then paint some green. Problem is, looking at this green, I don't have anything this bright. Like, not in any of the paints that I have, whether they're lacquers or even the Vallejo paints I've got. So what I'm going to have to do is use the decals, which is fine. These FineMolds decals are really good. So I just thought it'd be a bit neater maybe if I painted it. So I will be using these decals. So I've got to paint everything with the white primer that's going to be red. So I've sort of done the tips of the wings, but of course I need to do the rest. And also the fuselage. The problem is I really need to get everything else assembled first. So the motor attached to the wing and the struts and all glued in place. So I need to do that before I sort of give everything a spray of red. I can still do the underside of the fuselage and the bottom of the floats using the SMS tan. So I'm going to go ahead and do that, and then I'll start on the gluing together of the motor onto the wing, and then the wing onto the fuselage. Alright, I've painted the underside of the fuselage, so nice not having to do any masking for that. That's all come up okay. Now the next thing is to sort of get the assembly of the rest of the fuselage and the engine in place, so I can basically hit the whole lot in the red at the same time. So you can see I've glued the engine to the top of the wing, and of course I have the wires coming out. Now one thing that I had to do is that the locating pins are really quite accurate, and there's not a lot of wriggle room in them. So what I've had to do is just drill out a bit of the side towards my finger there, if it'll focus, just a little bit to allow for the wires to poke through as well. So still got the front two locating pins which locate really well, but just these back ones just need a little bit of drilling out just to allow for the wires. The other thing that I've had to do to allow for the wires, so this is where the bottom of the wing will attach to, is I've just grinded out a little bit of material just on the sides here, and again this is where the wires sort of poke out of the posts here, and you need to be able to have them sort of poke through on the other side. So let's get this one sorted out. Okay, so it's a matter of basically feeding the wires through. You have to come up from the bottom here. So what I want to do is get a nice clean sort of joint where those posts attach. That is looking pretty good. Pretty good. So now I just take some Tamiya extra thin cement. Just a little dab of it around the base. That should be enough to hold it. And of course now the wires can feed down into the rest of the fuselage. Now I'm trying to work out whether it's worth me sort of painting this bit separately from the rest and then just sort of fitting this on. I'm thinking that might be a somewhat easier way to go, but I'm not sure. But anyway, I've got to wait for this to dry before I worry about any of that sort of thing. So I'll leave that to dry. And once that's dry, we can sort of start looking at the next step. Okay, before I start painting the red on the kit, there's a couple of areas that call out for a metallic colour. Now they actually, if I remember rightly, for the radiators they call out silver, but I've actually used SMS steel. So what's that, PMT 06, and that's just over a black surface primer. So there's this area under the engine here, so I've got to mask that off, and also around these radiators sort of around the edge, and the rest of it of course is red, so I've got to mask all that stuff off before I start painting the red. The other thing that I'm going to do is, I think I've decided that I'm going to kind of paint this bit separately from the rest of the fuselage, just for now anyway, and I need some way to sort of hold this. So I think if I just use a bit of, I've just got a bit of spare sort of tube stock here. I think if I just glue that there, I'll be able to grab that with the clips, so that I've got something to grab onto. Right, let that set up to dry. Okay, so time to get masking. Okay, I've done some masking, so this is on the main fuselage, just to prevent paint going on the interior there. I'm just going to sort of hold it in place, I think, with a bit of a cardboard roll. Should be okay. Now, one thing that I want to get glued on there before I sort of paint the whole lot is the, I think is it the speed gauge, speed meter, sorry. It's like this tiny little propeller thing that sits on the side. So I need to get some to be extra thin. Get just the smallest sort of dab in this groove here, and then try and locate it without it pinging across the room. Mind you, I am using my fingers and not a pair of tweezers. So I tend to find if I'm using my fingers, I'm less likely to ping it across the room. Now the actual propeller on this thing is, or wind vane or whatever it is a different colour, but I can just hand paint that. So I'm just trying to sort of get it lined up properly. Now it's a bit tricky to sort of determine whether it's supposed to sort of stick straight out or whether it's on a bit of an angle, but I think it's not going to make that much of a difference as long as it's in there straight. It'll be a bit of a pain in the neck hand painting that little prop on there. Okay, so let that dry. Now the top part is basically ready to go, except for the floats, which I'll have to glue on. But I've masked the underside here. I've masked all the holes and the side where the exhaust goes in, so I'm not getting paint sort of throughout the engine area. And so I have to glue on these radiators. So I'm just trying to work out whether I should be able to get paint in there alright. Probably would have been better to do this before I'd actually stuck the motor on, but you know, we can't make things too easy for ourselves. That'd be no fun. Just trying to work out whether there is a left and right side. I don't think there is though. When in doubt, check the instructions. Yeah, they're both the same piece. Were they? No, they were different pieces, but I can't tell the difference between them. Alright, so let's get a little bit of glue on here. I've got to say, you won't see it until I've taken the masking off, but I haven't really done a good job of these radiators. They're two halves stuck together, and where the seams are, sort of on the back and the front of it, it's actually not flash. I tried to rescribe the lines, the fins in there, and it doesn't look great. So I don't think I'll be using a panel line wash because I don't want to highlight my mistakes. Alright, so I just need to make sure that these are horizontal. Now I've glued all this in place and I've just realised I need to sand this back into the engine. I really have not thought about this well at all. Anyway, I'll wait till the radiators dry in place. Then I can sort of sand that little bit. We will wait for that to set up a bit, and then I can sort of just double check once it's dried a little bit. Alright, now I wanted to sort of talk about masking the windscreen because it is quite small. So let's get a bit closer. Okay, I'm not sure how well this is going to work because I'll probably end up going off shot. But you can scream at me and tell me that I'm not in focus or I'm not in shot. Okay, so normally when I'm doing like little pieces like this, I will start with the outside of the glass. So I'll actually mask that first and then I will completely mask the interior. So for this, I just need some tape. And you just lay it over the whole surface, and it's better to sort of just start on one side first, and then I'll just burnish it down with a toothpick so that you can sort of see where that line is, where you need to cut it. Thankfully, this looks like all straight lines. Okay, and I will take a very sharp scalpel blade. This is, what's this, a number 11 blade. And very gently just follow that line. This is actually quite sharp. It's got some quite sharp bits on it. Now, using some tweezers, I'm going to pull it up very gently, and just want to make sure that the corners are cut. Now, I can see a bit there that's not actually cut yet. Good. That's looking good. Here we go. Okay, and this bit we shall fold over. And just burnish that down again with a toothpick. Okay, and then I will repeat the process for the side. So again, just stick down a bit of tape and then cut, follow the lines there. And then I will, for the inside, I'll just tape up the whole lot. And so that's the sort of process that I use for doing those kind of clear windscreen bits on planes. Before I attach the floats, obviously I need to mask the underside of them, which are now painted tan. So I just want to quickly show you the method I use for masking these, because they're an irregular shape. They're sort of more of an organic shape, which makes it a little bit harder to sort of set up your masking tape. So I got this one here, got the tan underneath. So now it's just a matter of getting some tape. What I want to do is just lay it down, starting at one end. Then I'm going to burnish it down with cotton bud. Now I've done that, I'm just going to sort of cut away the excess here, just because it's going to be a bit more problematic to have it all on there. Now this method I sort of showed when I did the 1/72 version of this kit. Basically what I'm doing is I'm burnishing it down on the edges. So a nice delineated edge, and it's going to become a little bit more apparent in a minute as to why we need that. Then I'll do the other side. Okay. So it's just a matter of laying that tape down so that it is covering all the surfaces we need it to. And then because it is an irregular shape, the next thing I do is I'll take you can use a sanding stick or even a file, and just start running it along the edge. And you sort of want to run it away from the mask area, and you want to sit the sanding stick on that very edge. If I hold that up, you can see it's starting to wear away the tape. And so as long as you keep that sanding stick on that edge, it will follow that contour perfectly. You'll note that I'm filing in the same, or I'm sanding in the same direction, because I want to sort of flatten the tape down on the painted side, or on the side I'm trying to protect. Okay, and what you can see is it's starting to break through there, so we're getting a nice clean sort of edge. So I'll just get the rest of it done. Get back in a tick. Okay, so I've sort of done the sanding part of it, and I'm going to keep a scalpel handy because the nature of the shape of this one is that there are a couple of points that are a little bit difficult to sort of just sand. You actually have to make an incision, and so this will be one of them here. May require a little bit of tidy up, but you can see as I pull that across, you get a nice clean line there. So there's a slight little tear there. And then this front bit is a little bit tricky just because it's sort of a V shape, and so it is a little bit more difficult to actually use just the sanding technique alone. In there. And I do just want to check the fronts of them. And maybe coming through the microphone, but I am getting serenaded by magpies at the moment, which is always lovely. Australian magpies, a beautiful song, and they're a lot less. Make a lot less racket compared to the sulphur-crested cockatoos. I'll make a little bit of a mess of this one. So what I might do, just take a little bit of tape and just wrap it over the edge here. That's better. Alright, so now we've got these two ready to go. So it's time to stick them onto the bottom of the wing. And let's see, these bottles are actually pretty good for holding the wing in place. Okay, now I don't think it actually matters which side goes on where. It is a little bit tight. I wonder if it is. Okay. That one goes in. Oh, so there you go. I think they are keyed left and right. Okay, so now I'm going to get some glue on these, and I'm just using, to be extra thin. Okay, I'll let that set just a little bit, and then that way I can sort of check to make sure that they are vertical. Okay, they're actually pretty good, I think. Look at those. So I'll leave that to set up and dry, and then I think we're going to be ready to get some at least some primer down on the fuselage and the wings, and of course then look at the red. Alright, I've got some base colours down, and pretty happy with the colour of the red. So for that I chose SMS Italian Red. Is there really any other choice in this range for the colour of this plane? So I'm just sort of checking over to make sure I haven't sort of missed any spots, so that way I can sort of unmask some of the areas ready for a gloss coat, so I can put down a panel line wash. So I'm just sort of checking that. I can't sort of see anything where I've left. The undercoat is white, so it should be reasonably straightforward to sort of see any areas that I've missed. There are some bits that were a little bit tricky just because I'd sort of stuck them in place, like underneath the engine, around the radiators and what have you, but that looks pretty good. Also, the rest of the fuselage, this is ready for a gloss coat, so I can, panel line wash in some of these panel lines, and also get the decals on. I did some other painting as well. So for the exhaust, I've used red oxide, and the propeller, I haven't done the spinner yet. The spinner I think has to be silver, but for the props I've used just SMS brown. Actually, I think the spinner, now it's interesting, the spinner there's actually a call out for tan, and it's actually different to the call out in the 1/72 version, which actually calls out for this to be silver, so I think that's kind of interesting. So I'll probably just end up using Russian sand, and this is a little bit of a different colour to what you'll see on the underside of the fuselage, just to give it a little bit of variation. And as far as the figure goes, I've just used an airbrush to spray the skin colour for his face, which I'll mask off and then airbrush the rest of his jumpsuit, and then I can do all the detail brushing. So for his face, I've just used SMS Flesh Pink. Alright, so it's time to unmask some of these elements just to see how it actually went. And of course this is always a bit nerve-wracking because you always want to make sure that your masking went well. Sometimes it may need some touch-up. That looks pretty good. Alright, so the radiators, pretty happy with those. Yeah, you'll be able to see in the back there it's a little bit of a mess where I tried to rescribe some lines, not too successfully, but that's alright. So one of the reasons why I went with the steel as opposed to silver, it's going to be a little less obvious. Yeah, the masking I am really worried about is these floats. Just because it's going to be a bit tricky to touch up if I need to. I need to hold this steady. Okay, I think I'm pretty happy with that one actually. Looks pretty good. Okay. Not too shabby actually, not too bad at all, so I'm very happy with the way that's come out. Now I do have some masking around the engine here, which I think I'm going to leave in place until after I've sort of done the panel line wash, or sorry, the gloss coat. But I've got one more bit under here. Yeah, that looks pretty good. Okay, so I reckon that's ready for a gloss coat. And the gloss coat will really just be for the purpose of doing panel line wash. It won't be sort of a high gloss that I'm going for. Now, there's nothing on the fuselage I have to unmask, so I can leave all the interior masked up, that's no drama. So I'll give that a gloss coat. Okay, I want to start talking about the base. So you can see I've got this box here, and I've drilled a few holes in it. It sort of starts out as just a acrylic, what they call acrylic gift box. So I find these things really nice to, you know, mount models on because you can fit some electronics inside. You've got this nice clean lid on the bottom to access stuff, so I really like using these. So I've drilled out a couple of holes, one for a switch, so just a toggle switch. The other one for a USB, just a power socket. And for this particular model, I'm going to have to include some other electronics. So I'm going to have 5 volts going in. I need to step that down to 3 volts for the motor. And I also want to add a speed controller for that motor. So just so that it's not running flat chat, I can sort of slow it down a little bit. Next step is for me to paint this black. I've also got a hole in the top for a bit of aluminium tube, so this is 3mm in diameter, and I will be feeding the wires through this and it'll be sticking in the top like that. So I do have to give this a coat of, I'll use some metal primer first, and I just use some SMS metal primer, and then I'll paint both the stand here and the tube in SMS black primer. I'm going to have to drill a hole in the base of the fuselage here, and then of course I'll be mounting the tube on a slight angle just so that it's a bit more of a dynamic pose. Now I've done all the decal work, and I've got to say I'm not really that happy with it. I should have probably, you know, painted the white and green stripes as opposed to using decals. The problem was that I'd sort of put this base green and white decal down and then the logo over the top of it. When I put this top bit on, you can sort of see that there's it's slightly transparent, so you can sort of see the layers of the 2 decals. By then it was sort of too late. I sort of had to, you know, stick to my guns and do the whole decal thing. If I'd not put that logo on, because they don't give you any spares, they only give you the 2 of them, and it really needs to be there, you know, in my mind's eye anyway. So I'd sort of, you know, I'd committed then, and yeah, the decals, I suspect, I haven't had, you know, too many problems with FineMolds decals in the past, but I suspect this is probably, if not an original pop of the kit, it's an old one. So it was a kit first released about 10 years ago, no, 20 years ago, I think. I think it's like 2004 or something like that. Let me check the instructions, or is it on the box? Yeah, so this is a 20-year-old kit, 2004. So as a result, the decals are probably pretty old in this kit, and they're a little bit brittle in places. So where I had to fold over the decals for the rear stabilizer here, I had all sorts of problems, and I've had a few of them sort of break and chip and stuff. They were fine on the bottom of the wing. They sort of behaved themselves reasonably well. They're a little bit thick because when I applied some decal solutions, they still haven't sort of bedded down properly, and I've done multiple layers. I think that's as good as I'm going to get it. So anyway, not really happy with the decals. I should have painted it, but you know, it is what it is. And once it's got a flat coat on it, I don't think it'll look too bad. The next step is to do just a little bit of panel lining. Now I don't want to go overboard on this thing. It's really sort of for those main panel lines you can see on the wings and fuselage. and for that I'm going to actually use some Tamiya Accent Colour Deep Brown. This stuff is enamel based, it's very thin, essentially thin enamel paint, and you do have to give this stuff a really good shake in the bottle. So those of you who've been a long time viewer of my channel knows I do a lot of panel lining stuff. Quite often I'll use my own enamel paint to, I'll just thin that down to the colour that I want, but I think this colour should be pretty suitable. And when you're panel lining, it's just a matter of getting a little bit on the brush, just touching it to the panel line, and let capillary action do the rest. Now just sort of looking at in the light, it's actually the best colour to use, I think. That's spot on. I didn't want it sort of black, because I think that would be maybe just a bit too much. So this is a nice colour, I think. Not a huge number of panel lines on this kit. There's some nice sort of rivet detail and stuff on the motor. But I think most of it's going to be just in these panel lines. Right, that's good. Do a little bit on the underside of the wing. Yeah, and I think that's it. I don't think it needs a lot. I think it is kind of subtle. Try and get the right light so you can actually see it. It's very thin, so these panel lines are really nice and thin. I did actually scribe them out a little bit just to make them a little bit deeper. Yeah, I'm pretty happy with that. Okay, oops, I need to do the bottom of the floats, so I'll just use the same colour for that. Not that you're going to really see it that much. We'll let that dry for a few hours. And let's have a look at the rest of the fuselage. Now normally I would put a gloss coat over the top of the decals just to sort of protect them while I'm doing the panel lines, but I don't think there's going to be sort of any panel lining I'm going to be doing sort of directly on the decals. So I'm not too fussed. The great thing about doing this panel lining, of course, is it's nice and easy to clean up. You know, there'll be areas where you've got marks where you've basically dabbed the panel liner on, but it's gone outside the line. And the good news is that is really easy to clean up. And I know I've mentioned before that you know, some of the people prefer to use the panel line or an enamel wash, and they'll do it over the whole kit. And for me, I'm not a big fan of doing that just because I'm lazy and I don't like all that cleanup. So it's just a different way of doing basically the same thing. These panel lines aren't that deep, so I think some of them probably won't work as well. That's all right. Okay, I think that's it for those. Let's see what else we got. Got some panel lines on the underside. Again, I'm just going to use the same colour. Actually, on these ones you can see it work a lot clearer. Just dab it there. And the longer you hold it in the line, the more ink will, or the more paint that will flow through. So now for the two exhaust pipes that come out the side of the motor, I'm actually going to use Tamiya Accent Colour Black. going to put just a little bit in the hole just to add to the effect of it being hollow, even though it's technically not. I think that's all it needs, really. It doesn't need very much at all. Alright, I think that's all the panel lining done. I think, apart from whatever stuff I do on the figure. So, leave that dry for a little bit of time and then I'll take you through the cleanup process. The panel lining has had a few hours to dry, so given how little of it I've used, it should be dry enough for the cleanup process. So for cleaning it up I use Shellite, but you can use just any sort of enamel thinner. And I use a cotton bud, a little bit of Shellite on the cotton bud, dab the excess off, and it's literally just sort of wipe it across the panel line. And you're always going over the panel line as opposed to following in the direction of the panel line, because you want to keep all the enamel paint actually sort of in that groove. But you can sort of see that's how easy it is to clean up. Not rocket science this stuff, that's for sure. But it helps to make a really nice, sharp, detailed line. And we got a few pieces up here. And given that you can sort of see where I've left the dabs in, there's not a lot of cleanup on this kit. Now, normally where there's a lot of cleanup, I'll sort of go through, do the initial cleanup, and then I'll sort of leave it a day or so, and then come back and have another look. But I think given that there's so little cleanup to do on this one, I should be able to clean it up and then give everything a nice matte coat. We've started work on the figure, so I've just done some brush painting. It's pretty rough, but once I give it a gloss coat, put a wash over it, it should look fine. And given that you're only really going to see a sort of top, you're not going to see a lot of detail in the pilot. So just to talk about some of the colours I used. For the white, I just used Vallejo White Grey. For the black, I used the Vallejo Mecha Color Range, Pure Black. For the goggles, it's just like a hint of sort of blue of the lenses. For that, I used Mecha Color Blue Grey. For the pilot's cap, I used Mecha Color Dark Green. For the belt buckle, so it's just a little bit of silver there, I used Vallejo Model Air Chrome. And finally, for the seat belts, I used enamel color. I used X28 Part Green, just because that's kind of closest to the green of the decals for the seat belts. So that's the brush painting. Of course, for the face I used SMS Skin, and then for the rest of the flight suit I used Russian Sand by SMS. Also done a little bit of brush painting, like I've done the matte coat now and I've done a bit of brush painting, so just for the rim around the cockpit there in black, and just a little bit of silver for the little propeller on the speed gauge or whatever it is. So it's all sort of coming together. I'll just show, I've also stuck on the exhaust pipes on the side, so everything's got a matte coat. It did look a bit better once it got the matte coat down, as models quite often do. The decals look a little bit better with a matte coat. They're still not ideal, but it is what it is. I have painted the base, and that's just SMS black primer and a matte coat over the top of that, so that's ready to go. I've also painted the 3mm diameter tube, and this is about 8 centimeters long if I remember rightly. I've also drilled a hole in the bottom part of the cockpit, and the way I've got this oriented is it's not just sort of straight through, it's going to be on a bit of an angle, and that's to basically be on the opposite angle of what the Curtis is, just so that it's going to, you know, kind of mix it up a little bit, make it look a little bit more dynamic. So what I'll need to do is, it's a pretty good pressure fit in there, like so I need to putty that in place, and I'm just going to use some Infinity Model Magic Putty. So it's just a 2-part epoxy putty. It takes a while to cure, but it is really strong and has a good amount of working time. So I'll just put a little bit in here just to sort of hold it in place. I'll get the tube sort of fed through so it's not sort of yeah, so it'll be sitting up that high, and then there'll be a bit of putty around the edge just to sort of hold it in place. You won't see it once this is all sort of in darkness, you know, once the figures in and everything like that, you won't even see that. But yeah, that's sort of how the fuselage is going to sit, so I'm quite happy with that angle, and you know, it's kind of reasonably centered in the plane length. So I'll go ahead and putty this, and we're going to be very close to the sort of assembly and wiring of everything up. I've given the pilot figure a gloss coat, just using SMS clear gloss, and now it's time to just use a little bit of accent colour to bring out some of the details. For the face, I'm going to use this orange brown. I'm not going to need very much of this at all, because it's really just going to be around the sort of nose area, a little bit on the forehead. See, it's just giving his face a little bit more definition, a little bit of colour variation. Really, at this scale, it doesn't have to be super, you know, sort of super accurate. For his jumpsuit, his pilot suit, I'm going to use accent colour brown. This is really just to bring out those folds in the material. Once I go in and clean all that up, at least some of that detail will be pulled out. Now for the top of his flying hat and his goggles, I might use just a little bit of accent colour black. Now this is really just to tidy up where I painted in the goggles, so the goggle surrounds are black, and this will help to just tidy up those lines a little bit. Alright, I will leave that sit and dry for maybe a day or so, and then I can go through and clean up all those messy spots. But that's really about all I want to sort of do to the pilot figure. Really, once it's sitting in the cockpit, you're not going to see very much at all. Before I work on the electronics in the base, I need to basically get the wing stuck on the rest of the fuselage. But before I do that, I have unmasked and stuck on the windshield. And thankfully this has got a really nice way of being able to affix the windshield without getting too much of a messy glue mark. You can see a tiniest little bit in there, but it's really not that bad. And there's actually a pin in that little hole that the windshield fits into, and so I've actually glued it from that side, and for that I've just used this canopy glue from Testers, or clear part cement. It's just like a PVA or white glue, and so that's allowed me to stick that down without sort of making too much of a mess on the fuselage. Now the next thing I've got to do is try and get the rest of this stuck in place. So get it roughly lined up, just make sure it fits okay. Yep, yeah, just broke off the exhaust. Nope, I think I've just broken off it. I think I want to take them off for now. So I think I've got that lined up as best I can. And I think what I'm going to end up doing is super gluing it from the inside. I knew I shouldn't have stuck those exhausts on. I kind of was tempting fate. I thought, I'll stick them on so I don't have to worry about it later. But I was thinking at the same time, I'm probably going to knock them off when it comes to attaching the wing. And guess what? That's exactly what I did. So just a little bit of super glue. Okay, so now we get to the fun bit, which is basically trying to get it sort of all together. So I've done some work on the electronics and I just want to quickly run through that, so explain what's going on here. So I've got the switch and the USB power installed. So essentially I've got 2 breakout boards. One converts the 5 volts from the USB down to 3 volts. And then from that board, the 3 volts goes into this speed controller for the motor. So basically there's your voltage goes in, and then you've got the positive and negative from your motor going out. And I've set this up so that it's all basically header pins, so it's really easy to sort of connect and disconnect. So that bit of it's ready to go. What I have to do now is sort of mount the post, but I've got to feed the wires through before I sort of get it all lined up. So this is where it gets a bit tricky. Just to quickly show you, so the wing is glued on. I've also put in place the sight there, the gun sight, which was a bit tricky. I had to get in there with tweezers to kind of maneuver it. Now I need to basically get these wires and try and get them started down the tube. Try and straighten this out as best as possible. Alright, so it looks like I'm going to have to extend these wires, which I really didn't want to do, but looks like I've got no choice. So I will get that done. Alright, so I've mounted the plane on the base here. It's all sort of very loose at the moment. I still haven't glued down the base of the fuselage to the rest of it. But I do have all the electronics sort of sorted now, and I haven't tested it yet, so I'm not sure how this is going to go. Fingers crossed this will work. So I've got it plugged in. So let's turn it on. And I think I've got this, I'm hoping, as I adjust the potentiometer. Yep, there we go. So you can see I can sort of slow it right down. It's probably a bit hard to see on camera, but so if I take it up a notch, so you can hear that motor sort of speed up as I adjust the potentiometer. Now, I don't want it going super fast. Obviously, I want it sort of going as slow as possible. I don't want this thing to sort of fly off and so on. But it's interesting because you can hardly see it while it's turning. You probably see it better on camera. In real life, you can't see it. Actually, it's blurred quite well. So I think I've got the balance reasonably good on it. But I'm very happy with that. So now I can sort of set that, forget it, and basically get all of this this electronics inside, so then I can concentrate on gluing the base, getting the exhaust back on, and I think we're going to be ready to go. Actually, before I do that, what I might do is I might put a bit of felt on the base here. So I'll just get a little bit of felt here, so it's not, because I've got it sitting on a glass shelf and it never sounds great sliding it around on glass. So I've cut out this bit of self-adhesive felt. I'm going to take the backing off. Okay, so now I want to try and get it lined up as best I can. And then what I'll do is I'll just trim the sides. If using a curved blade, it's going to be better. That's the trick. Use a curved blade on cutting this stuff. It just seems that the straight blade sort of picks up on the adhesive a bit more and starts to drag it. Okay, so we've got nice felt bottom on the base now. So I'm going to try and tuck all this stuff up without hopefully damaging anything. Okay, that's all in place. One more test. There she goes. It even sounds like a very miniature plane motor. Get a bit closer to the mic maybe. Very happy with that. Okay, so 2 more things I have to do and then I can get on to some beauty shots. Well, actually there's 3 more things. So first of all I have to glue the base down. I think I can do that off camera just because it's going to be a little bit difficult to show, but essentially it's going to be a dab of glue underneath at the back and then a little bit up the front, and I'll just use super glue for that. The other thing I have to do is stick the exhaust back on the engine and then finish off the pilot by cleaning up the enamel wash and giving him a matte coat. So I'll probably do all that off camera, but so just some sort of final thoughts on this kit. First of all, I still stand by the fact this thing goes together so beautifully, and it's just so nice to not have to worry about seams on a fuselage. So in that respect I really love this kit, the way it's engineered. The only real issue I had was with the decals, and I suspect that's because it's an older kit. It has been sitting in my stash for quite some time. So, you know, just be mindful of that. You probably are better off painting the stripes on the rear stabilizer and underneath the wings. But overall, really nice kit. You know, it's a really nice representation from the movie. Love it to bits. So I'm glad I've got yet another version of the Savoia I can add to my collection. So on with the beauty shots. Until next build series, I'll catch you later.